Yep.
You have a marketing consulting business.
Yep.
Beautiful. You can start whenever you want.
Okay.
Rich, thanks for inviting me in today. I know your schedule is busy, and I always appreciate that people take the time. And so there must be some urgency to what you're thinking since you invited me in after networking. Tell me a little bit about the thoughts you had after we met at networking.
Well, you had mentioned that you work with companies in the professional development capacity. And we're certainly a business that's strong, we're in a good position. But I'm of the mind that we can always get better.
Sure.
So I was really interested to hear what you had to say.
It's an amazing thing, just as a side note, the number of companies who believe they can always get better but aren't committed to getting better. And so tell me a little bit about commitment and the theory of getting better.
So I come from an athletic background,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe that there's always room for improvement.
Mm-hmm.
And my company believes that too. The people that I've hired believes that.
Mm-hmm.
So our commitment to getting better is simply just understanding how to have better conversations.
And hopefully you're not offended, but that's not commitment. Here's what commitment sounds like. We must get better, and I'm looking for someone to help us get better. That's really what commitment is. It's not, I'm going to choose you, Bill, but I'm looking for someone to do this because we are unconditionally committed to going forward. Tell me a little bit about that versus what you just said to me.
Yeah, Bill, that's pretty strong.
Well, it is in the sense that I don't want to waste your time talking to you about all the stuff my company can do for you, because that's only important to me typically. I usually work with people who have that stiffened spine, that unconditional commitment to grow. They're not going to always choose me, but they're going to find somebody who fits the personality that they need to work with them.
Okay. So our biggest issues then when it comes to sales, quite simply, we get a lot of pressure and stress put on our fees at the end of the day. So we're getting plenty of appointments, but we're very good when we're in front of customers. We're probably closing 80% of the appointments that we have when we're in front of customers. Our problem is we have to discount. So that's one of the biggest problems that we face. So if you were to help us, I would like help in negotiation. And my people would like help in negotiation. And to be fair, I'm better than they are. And I don't know if that's because I own the business or because they don't think they have the latitude. I'm not exactly sure what the issue is there, but we need help with negotiation.
Sure. And one more quick thing, and I apologize for keep going back to it, is you went right into a problem without telling me about your commitment. So can we kind of hang on that thought for a minute? Are you committed to growing your business? I know you've got a business that's been around for 10 years, and I realize that's important for me to know. But the challenge is, are you committed to growing your business?
When you say growth, do you mean adding staff or do you mean adding to the bottom line?
Bottom line is what we're talking about. Businesses run on the scoreboard. The scoreboard's always the bottom line.
Yeah, so we definitely want to add to the bottom line. There's no doubt about it. And I am extremely committed to that.
Okay, and so how much do you want to add to the bottom line of your company? Do you have a number in mind?
Yeah, at least 1 to 2 million.
And where are you right now?
We're at 5 million.
Okay, so am I hearing you say that you're 100% committed to adding another $1 million to $1.5 million to a bottom line of a $5 million company?
Yeah, I'd say million is bottom, the floor, and I'd say 2 million is the ceiling.
Okay, good. And so you realize that's a big task. You realize that's a big challenge.
Yes.
Have you thought about this before?
I have.
Tell me a little bit about what you thought about it, what you thought when you had those thoughts before.
Well, let's go buy a few books, and so we've done that. We've gone through that process. So we would buy a book, Emotional Intelligence, for example, for the entire team, and so we'd read it over the course of a couple of months, and then we'd meet and we'd debrief on it and implement some of these things. I'm just not sure that it's really done much to move the needle. So things like that we've done in the past. I'm a member of Vistage. Familiar with Vistage?
I am.
So it's a CEO peer group, and I really like that. It holds me accountable. It's great from a leadership perspective, and to keep my eye on the ball when it comes to the financials of the company. It hasn't turned into sales success for us.
But maybe it makes sense for us, this is a pretty big conversation, to decide how much time we're going to spend today talking about it. On the phone, we said we'd spend an hour. We've
Right.
already spent 10 minutes kind of in this back and forth conversation. How much time do you want to commit to spending to discuss this today?
Yeah, the rest of the time that we have.
Good, and so you're still good for the other 50 minutes?
Yes.
All right, great. So then maybe we should isolate issues. You're thinking of 1 million to 2 million to your bottom line. The three biggest issues that impact your bottom line, what are they?
Well, number one, we're discounting.
Discounting.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Second thing in our world, I think we're giving too many presentations.
Too many presentations.
And what I mean by that is there's a lot of, and we talked about this at the networking event, there's too much follow-up and not enough commitment on our prospect side. And I'm not sure that our people are accepting think it over the right way. I don't know that they're battling it. I don't know that they know how to overcome objections.
Write this down if you want to remember it. And the issue that we face is most of the time presentations don't close because we don't have a process to close them. And so I want you to write down process to close proposals above 70%. So if we get that far, we'll talk a little bit about that. But it's one of the things we find. Most people close proposals at a very low rate. And by the way, curiosity, what's the rate that you use, that you have to close your proposals right now?
We're probably at 40%.
40%.
Yeah.
It's very good.
Oh.
So then what we'd be talking about is another 30%. And you have to think, and I'm not ready to talk about it yet, what would an additional 30% closing rate be for your proposals? What would it be as a contributor to that $2 million that we're talking about?
That would be huge.
Would be?
Yeah.
All right, good. That's going to be important enough to talk about. So we have using price to close, raising the proposal closing rate by at least 30%. What's the third issue?
We're, in my opinion, too reliant on our current client base. So we do a good enough job, I think, of expanding our influence within those relationships. But my issue is, and our salespeople's issues are, and maybe you can help me because I'm trying to come up with a way to compensate them, to push them to go out there and find new business and new accounts. It's just not something that we do well. I don't know that there's enough emphasis on it. Some of that blame maybe falls on me. But it's just not something that seems comfortable for our business.
I have two ideas that we worked with others in that area, and they might not apply here, but one of them is called the concept of new money. Business runs on existing money and new money, and too many times shops like yours feed off of existing money because it comes in large numbers. But the challenge of existing money is at a certain point, it dries up. And if you don't have new money coming in to take over when that goes away, typically the business struggles. And so I want you to think new money versus existing money is one concept. The other concept we call cookbook, and it's an interesting concept in the sense that chefs, great chefs, when they begin making a recipe, will follow it directly. But here's the problem over time. Over time, they begin to add a pinch of this as opposed to a teaspoon of this and a pinch of that, and they begin to customize it. So when we look at those chefs, they take what they've learned in following the recipe, but they make it customized. Well, the cookbook is the same thing.
Yeah.
What we'll create for you is a behavioral model that allows you to prospect strategically as well as tactically, and we'll do it in an exact format at the beginning. Over time, anecdotally, you'll shift that into what makes the most sense for the company, but as with a great chef, you've got to start with a recipe, and that'll be your recipe for success.
Okay. So Bill, do we do this one-on-one? How does this work?
Since you're the sales guy in a company this large, it would be you. Are there any other people that touch sales directly?
Yeah, there's three.
Three.
Other people.
What do they do?
They're customer service account managers / sales as well.
/ sales.
So
Okay, good.
they're outbound, I'd say 10-20% of the time, and the rest of the time they're doing customer service account management stuff.
And if they were functioning at the highest level under the sales heading when they were in it, what could their impact be on the bottom line?
That could make up the $1 to $2 million right there. If they were functioning at the highest level of their potential, that could make it up.
And if we look at potential, what are they functioning at right now?
70%.
Okay, so again,
Maybe that's high, that's being generous, probably 60%. They're not trained assassin salespeople. They look at themselves as more of a customer service and account management role, more of a trusted advisor with the accounts that we're currently working with right now, versus going out there and hunting.
that might explain the note you took on new money versus existing money. These people are used to taking out existing money, but might not have
Yeah.
the skill to get new money.
Yeah, and I'm not, again, we talk about it in our meetings and I push them, I'm just not sure that it's getting through. I don't know that they're getting the message.
Okay, all right. Anything else you thought of when we were talking about those three?
That's really it.
That's
those
it.
Those three areas. I don't know, Bill, and you've been doing this for a long time. Maybe it makes sense for me to go out there and find a brand new salesperson who's just going to be focused on hunting.
It's a pretty big leap right now. We may determine that's the case, but I think right now, my concern is the company as it exists today. Now, if you want to write down, work with me on new hires, I'm happy to do that too.
Okay.
But I think in the initial phase, we need to determine the sales culture that exists right now and work with that. Because then, anybody else you'd add would do what?
Just right in the bottom line.
Right into the bottom line. They're all gravy.
Right.
So we're at about the 20-minute mark, and I always do a check-in at the 20-minute mark of a conversation. Tell me the feel of this conversation to you.
Well, it's gone in a different way than I thought it would.
I apologize.
No, don't apologize. You challenged me to think differently, which I appreciate. So I'm curious, as we take a look at these issues and how they're affecting my business, what does the process look like?
Well, let's look at one issue. Maybe I can show you how the process works in one issue.
Okay.
What's the most important of those three issues to you?
I'd say going after new business.
Beautiful. Give me an example of going after new business. Tell me what that looks like to you.
Oftentimes for us, it's a referral.
Mhm.
So we're getting introduced to somebody. We have a conversation that tends to be pretty informal, maybe over lunch or over coffee. And then I start to understand what is it they need. And
Very
so
good.
I'm doing some kind of a needs analysis. And if it's one of my people and it's a smaller account, then they're doing this process.
Mhm.
So once that's done, I get a good understanding. I then put together a demonstration and a presentation for them.
Mhm.
And we're really good at that, Bill. I mean, we're really good at that. We've got it honed in. It's fantastic.
Love it.
We bring a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm to that meeting. When we're giving that presentation, it just makes me light up thinking about it.
Yeah.
We have a blast with that.
I think that's pretty cool, but here's the challenge with that. You're having so much fun, you're not relating it to the 40% closing rate. And so I want you to tell me a little bit about the concept of raising that closing rate and what you could be doing differently to do that and still have the fun that you're having, because marketing consultants bring a lot of energy to companies for sure.
I don't know that the enthusiasm actually translates to the other side of the table. So while we're excited and we've got great enthusiasm and energy when we're giving these presentations and these demos, I don't see it on the other side of the table. And too many times we're getting think-it-overs, and I know my people are getting think-it-overs too, especially with these new opportunities that we're going after. So our biggest challenge is how do we get that enthusiasm to translate to them, to get them excited, because I know, and I've seen it 100 times, you have to get them excited in order to do business.
Sure. This enthusiasm you have for this topic, is it because it's fresh in your mind or something you've been thinking about for a while?
Both, I'd say, but mostly fresh in my mind.
Good. And so how you said mostly a piece of each, but mostly what we're talking about now. Let's go back. When did you start thinking you should be doing that?
Being more effective in these
Yeah.
presentations? Probably about a year ago, Bill.
About a year ago.
Yeah, that's when I really started to notice that we weren't getting as many yeses as we had in the past. That for whatever reason, the sales cycle seemed to be just stringing itself along.
Sure. Well, you see my problem, right? You realized it a year ago. Here we sit today, a year later.
Yeah.
What made it so urgent today?
I didn't realize that there was help.
Okay.
So when we ran into each other at the networking event, you told me about what you did. I thought it might be nice to bounce a couple of these
Sure.
ideas off you.
Have you tried anything in that year to raise that issue and to make sure you don't lose the enthusiasm, but the closing rate goes up along with it?
No, I mean, it's really been about getting more opportunities in front of us. It hasn't really been honing in that presentation piece.
Let's look at that as a specific opportunity. And let's take a look at money and the money that being better at that could make, or the money that not being good at that could cost you. And so I want you to think a little bit about specific dollars in the last year,
Mhm.
the number of presentations that you've had. I want you to just focus on that for a minute. And the dollars that you may have missed in that year because you just said what you said.
So we do about 2 presentations a week.
2 a week.
So that gives us about 100 over the course of a year.
Okay, 100.
Our average sale is around $7,000.
$7,000.
Some much bigger, some a little smaller pieces of business. So if we get better at that and we go from a 40 to a 70% rate, again, we're talking in the millions.
And any specific number there that you came up with? Because it's kind of in the millions is an interesting thing.
Let's say 1.1 million.
1.1. It's not going to be an odd question for sure, but is that a lot of money to you?
Yeah, Bill, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
I
big.
say
I mean,
that-
that's where we need to be. Again, that's the floor. Right?
Sure.
Well, 1 million's the floor, 2 million's the ceiling, and the sooner I can expedite that process to get there, the better. I mean, that's what we're after here.
I love the thought. I say that and you laugh, but I sat in front of someone just like you 2 weeks ago who, when I said that $1 million is that a lot of money, they said, not really, Bill, because bringing you in would cause so much turmoil in my company that we might lose that as well as gain that. And so that's the only reason I asked that number, to make sure that it's meaningful to you.
I'm sorry, why would he say something like that? Or
Yeah,
should he?
it didn't make sense to me, but what he thought is that with me bringing in the sales process and
Yes.
changing some things that have to be changed in order to make up that dollar amount, that it just seemed like it was too much. I questioned his commitment at that point, because $1 million is a lot of money to me. But again, we're all different, so I just always want to make sure I validate that.
Sure. So Bill, when you say a sales process, I'm guessing that you're talking about steps that you would create or one would create in order to achieve a sale, and not CRM. Sales
CRM is a
process.
part of process. It tracks process, but it's not process on any level. And so many people confuse that. A CRM is basically a reporting mechanism that collects data.
Okay.
Now, sometimes it collects data randomly if you don't have a sales process. So
Yeah,
if
I
you use a
figured that
CRM,
out.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
a random collection. And it's great data, but what do you know about the data you collect? And most people don't even look back at their CRM. It's just a glorified outlook in their calendar.
Right.
So just for a second, we realize that $1.1 million is a lot of money, and we realize it's been a year, and I sit in front of you right now. Tell me a little bit about how thinking about that money, 1.1 million, makes you feel at this moment in time. I want you to just give me a visceral feeling about $1 million loss.
2 things. Well, $1 million loss pisses me off because I know we can be doing better. We didn't start this company to underachieve, so I'm not happy about it. It also gets me excited to think about the fact that the ceiling is higher, that we can reach higher with a little bit of development, with a little bit of pushing. Again, I'm committed to that. I don't necessarily know how we'll get there, but that's part of this conversation.
Good, let's skip forward now. We'll just stay in role play. We'll skip forward. I've covered the other 2. And so we're at about the 45-minute mark. And here's what my notes tell me. The first note says that price is costing you a lot of bottom line impact. And I think you said that lowering price is costing you about $500,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
That's one. Second, we talked about presentations and the closing rate on presentations, and you came up with about 1.1 million
Yeah.
for that. So what's a $500,000 and 1.1 million?
1.6.
1.6. And the third thing you said is, the fact that your salespeople were out there and the other people who sell, who spend some time in sales, weren't really expanding the business in their existing client base, nor were they capable of looking for new business. We called that new money. And that was about 400,000. So tell me a little bit about those numbers, 1.1, 1.5 million, and 400,000. It's about a $2 million problem.
Mm-hmm.
What are you hoping I could do for you in those areas?
Help me make up that $2 million. I mean, if we're going to cut to the chase, that's exactly what I'm hoping that you would help me do. Because I obviously have not been able to put together the recipe to be able to do that. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for those tools or the process
Sure.
that you might have in order to help me achieve that $2 million deficit.
I love the fact that you're enthusiastic about sales process. Most people aren't, and so that says you really have an understanding of what methodology could do for you. Here's my challenge. Before we would talk about process, we've got to take an x-ray, and the x-ray is typically what's going on down deep inside of you, as well as the 3 or 4 others that we talked about. So if we look at those 4 people and you, typically there's an investment you'll make to determine whether you even need sales training, because many times what we find is people think they do, but they don't. So before you speak, I'd like you to think about this. The next step in this relationship is to invite me back. If you choose to do that, here's what will happen between now and then. The first thing that will happen is you'll commit to taking an online assessment, and that assessment for you and your 3 people, your 4 people, will give you an x-ray. We'll know based on that x-ray the factors that are impacting those 3 things that are costing you $2 million. We'll have a clear understanding of what everybody's needs are. We'll have a clear understanding about how to map out training so it's most productive for you. And we'll have a clear understanding about how we will spend your money. And by the way, that's what this is about. Spending your money on training is an investment. And so I think too many times people rush into saying, here's what you're going to have to spend on training. And the individual says, well, what do I get for it? Just like you are. Well, we're going to know based on this x-ray what you get for it, the problems that will be fixed, the way we're going to fix them, and the result you can expect. So tell me a little bit now your thoughts about that assessment.
How much does it cost?
It's a great question. It's the logical question. It's very expensive. It's one of those things that we don't take lightly, and so you might want to put that seatbelt on in the chair you're sitting in.
I've got it on, it's buckled.
It's going to cost you $500 a person, so how many people are you willing to test if we get that far?
It would be 4.
So 4 times 500 is what?
2,000.
And then another $1,500 to roll it up into a culture piece that'll be very specific about what we're going to train your company on. So what are we looking at?
3,500.
3,500. And so that's your first commitment that gets you and I to move the ball forward if that's what you're interested in doing. Now, I know it's a lot. I know you're hearing it cold right now after about 55 minutes. So tell me a little bit about your feeling.
It is a lot. So what you're saying is, I invest $3,500, we all take assessments, and then we have a culture piece that'll be rolled up within that. And then the second meeting would be you coming back and telling me what you see.
Sure, but before we get that far, you said something interesting. You said the word invest. If I invest $3,500, investment usually implies return. If you were going to give me $3,500, and what was the loss we were talking about?
$2 million.
$2 million. If you're going to invest $3,500 to address a $2 million loss, tell me about your thinking about that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Mhm.
My understanding is this X-ray will give us a good sense of where the issues are internally for us. Is that
Okay,
right?
it is.
It's not necessarily a prescription for how we would train our people or myself to move forward.
Eventually, it gets to that point because we're going to know the needs. But initially, it tells us the capability. And remember, you put on the table, do I hire somebody new? It
Yes.
tells us whether you need to hire somebody new or not, too, as part of your
Okay.
culture.
Okay. So yeah, I'd have to.
Before you commit,
Yep.
one more thing. I want you to look at the next 3 days of your life and your people's lives, because this evaluation has to be taken in the next 3 days so that we get a good snapshot as soon as possible, because it's been, how long that this has been an issue?
A year.
Year, and years costing you money. So 3 days is the issue. So do you want to look at your calendar now with your people to see if you have the time to do it before you even commit to doing it?
Yeah, the only other thing that I would have to do is I'd have to bring my CFO
Mhm.
into this to make sure that we've got the funds to invest, and now is an okay time. So I have to have that conversation.
You say have to, and I would agree with that. What does your CFO tend to say when you talk about investing in programs like this?
He's not too excited about it.
He's a good CFO then.
Good.
He's a very good CFO. With the ones that say, yes, we're gonna invest in everything, typically shouldn't be CFO.
Mhm.
So what issues do you have to address with him? And by the way, while I think about it, is he in right now?
He's not.
He's not.
Yeah.
When will he be in?
He'll be in later this afternoon. He gets in around 2 o'clock today.
Well, you have a couple of options. And here's the first option. You sit in front of him, you explain that you'd like to do this, and he says no.
Okay.
What will you tell him?
If he says no?
Yeah.
Is there any way that we can scratch out something for this?
You'll ask him if there's any way.
Yeah, it's not the piece of the business that I focus on most. I lean on him for it. That's why he's here.
Let me go back to a note. About 5 minutes into the conversation, I really made a big deal out of unconditional commitment to resolving this. And so one of the issues that we may face right now is, you said what when I asked you about unconditional commitment?
I'm committed.
You're in. And he might not be Because what do we know about the relationship in accounting and sales?
It's tenuous.
It's tenuous at best, isn't it?
Yep.
So here's my challenge. My challenge is one of two.
Okay.
Either you, based on unconditional commitment, have the ability to sit with him and help him understand the impact this will have on the company, or you invite me back to spend a little time with him too, and I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
Which is it?
Let me take a swing.
Okay, so you'll go first.
Yep.
And when he says no, because they usually do?
I'll call you.
Okay, good. All right, let's get out of role play.
Okay.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about what went on. You saw it, and you can debrief it first as an outsider. So what did you see in the relationship that was forming here?
Well, just my high level thoughts were, I'm glad you fast forwarded, because that's mainly the goal of was wrapping it up anyway. Basically, my main thoughts were questions for you, actually, just as far as like getting the most impact out of these role plays. Curious if, these are the types of people that you're typically meeting with who are excited about sales process.
Or are you creating a role for the role play?
Yeah, it just seems like
Yeah, that's
you're
where I
making
was.
it a little too easy
That's
for
where I
Bill.
was.
So like,
Actually, I was trying to do the opposite, and I was trying to be squirrely and not get.
You did a great job in the
concrete
commitment
answers.
piece for that
Yeah.
over and over and over.
I was trying to do that throughout. I was trying to be really slippery. I was trying to be very non-committal.
Oh, you did a
because
good job of that.
A lot of people, especially with at least the first things that I've been running, they don't really know what we do. I mean, there's some kind of excitement there about professional development. We do believe we should be getting better, but they're very non-committal. So that's the rule.
So you felt that was real world from what you're experiencing?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a great question.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked.
yeah, so, and just to whatever objections and stalls that you're receiving, obviously, like the CFO one, I think, is one that you've had.
Yes.
So just interjecting those, obviously, so you can figure out how he responds to those. So I thought that was good at the end.
Well,
I noticed you did that at the end, but not really much throughout the conversation. And maybe it is very real world. I'm obviously not in the conversation, like in your sales call, so I don't know. And just wondering, what other disc styles that you can act as the business owner that you struggle most with. The ones that are probably less open or more of like the
High
S.
D.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, well, high.
Or C, DC?
Yeah, high C especially.
right. So a little bit more specific and, not willing to give as much. Like you were just very open, but it could have just been because of the questions Bill was asking, and it was very much of the,
Well, he's got a great way of reframing the conversation, right? So
Mhm.
I'm like, well, what's the process? What are we going to do? And it's back to, well, how much is this costing you? And so just seeing the reverses and the strip lining, and again, I need to watch the film because when I'm in it, I'm kind of in it, right? So I need to watch it so I can frickin' just get this down stone cold.
But you pick up a great thing. My pain funnel is direct, but my pain funnel allows him to wander and ask questions, knowing I can always pull him back to it, right?
Yes.
And I think that's what I was trying to have you experience here. That's why I wanted one pain funnel all the way to the bottom, so that you have a record of what my pain funnel looks like.
Yeah.
Because you threw me a couple of curveballs.
Right.
Both times. I went with the curveball,
Right.
but instead of chasing it,
You
I
beat
brought
it
it
back
back
in
in.
every
That was the
single
goal with the reverse or the strip line or the negative reverse or something like that.
Yeah, lovely.
And that's what Tim always talks about. My pain funnel is always strip line, reverse, negative reverse, reverse, strip line, negative reverse, reverse. And so it's just always, it's one of those things that going through allows me to make sure I'm not too rigid in keeping you in the funnel, because people fight rigidity. So
Right.
I want you to feel, okay, I'm getting what I want.
well, then you feel like it's an interrogation if it's question after
That's why,
question after question.
that's what I was
Can't
trying
be
to tell
literal.
this group on Friday is pain can't be an interrogation.
Right,
It has to be conversational.
right, exactly.
But you have to be confident enough in that conversation to let it sway a little bit, to let it belly a little bit and come back in.
Yeah, so I would ask process questions, or what does this look like, or what does that look like? And so he would appease me, right? And he would give me just a little bit, and then boom, it's reversed right back to pain. Or boom, it's reversed right back to the money that it's costing me. So I really like that. And again,
And using his words that he had already said about the loss or.
well, an unconditional commitment. So that starting off a meeting in that context is so strong, because no matter where they're at or where they think the meeting is going to go, you're immediately challenging them. See, that look is fantastic.
It's
because-
exactly what it is.
Right, right. And so that